Ahoy! If you were worried that I was going to cut it all off, don't worry. Most of it is still there. Like I said, cleaned up, not cut off, okay? But into today's topic. We're talking about the Pro League. We're talking about Season 8 Pro League changes because these are actually the biggest changes we've seen since the move to America completely. And I think there's some very surprising stuff in here, and I wanted to go through that because I don't really know if this is better or worse in every regard. So it's definitely, it has some pros and cons, and I thought that was very interesting to talk about because essentially it might change a lot for the pro players. So the announcement here: Smite Season 8 Pro League organizational update. As we enter Season 8 of Smite Pro League, HiRez Studios is excited to announce that it will be implementing a number of changes to increase player salaries, player control, and player engagements. So far, sounds great, right? We greatly appreciate everyone who has been a part of the Smite Pro League throughout the years, including all the organizations who currently sponsor teams for Season 7. Though we will create a pathway for these organizations to remain involved in the league going forward, beginning in Season 8, all SPL team slots will be controlled by HiRez Studios. This is very, very interesting. I don't even know. I think there are other games that do this, but it's not something that's very common, at least in the higher level competitive games. There's a TLDR breakdown of how this transition will impact our SPL operations and players. SPL team slots will be managed by HiRez Studios beginning in Season 8, with rosters being controlled by the players in conjunction with policies and processes managed by the SPL Commissioner's Office. Players will have contracts with HiRez, and salary payment will flow from HiRez directly to players. If you're not aware how that currently works, so currently the money goes from HiRez to the organization, and then the organization pays their players and can kind of make certain adjustments to like how much they get extra for certain things and stuff. I think like how much the organization themselves are willing to pay. And I think the reason why this is happening is because HiRez realized that most organizations aren't investing that much themselves and are just taking that money and are like, yeah, okay, cool, we get our name out there and we just give them the money that we get from HiRez anyway. So it's that, okay, then we might as well pay them ourselves directly and have less complications with the orgs not paying on time, because that's obviously something that happens behind the scenes, that the orgs are not paying out their players according to the contracts, and then you have the legal battles and everything. They skip all that by paying themselves. Organization will still be welcome to sponsor players or entire teams. Interesting, by the way, just sponsor for an individual player, maybe just for equipment. But team names will be provided by HiRez Studios and will remain fixed for upcoming seasons. This is, again, interesting as well, because this means even if an org sponsors a team, the team will not have the org's name, because obviously otherwise the team, like HiRez would pay a lot for the team, whereas the org would get its name on the team very, very cheap, and they don't want that. They're like, okay, if we're paying them their full salary, then they might as well be the ones who take whichever name we choose and not the org's name. We're not going to advertise them for free. Guaranteed player salaries will increase from 30,000 per year to 46,666 per year. So a pretty impressive increase. And for the coach, the salary will also go up from 10,000 to 26,666 a year. So coach salary actually goes to a level where you can survive, at least, I would say. I think in Atlanta, at least, the cost of living is not insanely high. As far as I'm aware, it's not like the spot to be for people. So I think if you live within reasonable spendings, I think you can survive on 26,000 in the US, in Atlanta specifically. Probably not everywhere. But, I'm just trying to like compare this to other countries. But like in Europe, it would definitely be possible. In Australia, it would definitely be possible. But I think it's possible in Atlanta too. And that's pretty cool that the coaches are now getting a full salary, so they really counted like closer to what a player is, even though there's obviously still a huge pay disparity between what the players gets and the players get and the coach gets. But the players get a pretty solid salary now, I would say, with 46,000. Still, of course, you can always earn more. That's not the question, but that is good enough to pay your bills, I would say. And this will also mean that they potentially have to pay some more stuff, because you have to keep in mind that A lot of things will not come from orgs anymore, like their equipment, for example. If they need a PC, they will not have any like sponsors behind them automatically. They can, of course, get their own sponsors, but that way you'll have some more expenses, but nothing close to 16,000 as far as I can tell. Accommodation is something they already paid beforehand anyways, at least partially. And if they want to organize team houses or something, that, you know, still up to them, and they can still do that in the same way. Players will have the opportunity to earn additional revenue through in-game content sales. So that's basically what previously was like the team icons and stuff, like the wards. So I'm assuming that's going to happen again with the assigned team names, team merchandise sales, and sponsorships. So same thing as before. All players will be based in the Atlanta area, as in the previous 2 SPL seasons, but will have more control over their housing arrangements, which is good, because I know there were some issues with that as well. This will allow enough flexibility for HiRez to host LAN matches, assuming they can't be held safely without locking players into unfavorable housing situations. So I think that's overall a good decision, even though at the moment, at least, like, who even cares about any possibilities of LAN settings, because it's not even going to happen anyways for quite a while, I'm assuming. Right, why is HiRez making this change? We entered the free agency period for SPL Season 7. We saw a lot of concern from our pro player community centered around contract negotiations. Though they, like us, saw many benefits in aligning with esports organizations, they also felt hamstrung by the current league structure and the lack of negotiation power that players had in the with the organizations. And I completely see that. I know I talked to, I think it was when I talked to Mielzi about this, that I heard like some stories behind the scenes that I probably can't really go into detail about, but it was definitely frustrating for some of the orgs, and there was a lot of questionable stuff going on. We heard this and sought a way to guarantee a higher base salary to our players while allowing them to pursue sponsorships from organizations or other brands to further increase their income. Now, let's be realistic here. I don't think there's too many new sponsors. Maybe some players will keep the sponsors they already have, but too many new sponsors looking to like go heavily into Smite. It's not that popular as a competitive game, especially, but at the same time, again, the salary right now is pretty solid, I would say. Under the new structure, HiRez will own the teams, but the players will retain control over roster decisions and will have the opportunity to generate additional income through sponsorships, in-game content sales, and more. We believe with this structure, HiRez will be able to increase the visibility of the SPL and streamline operations, ultimately to the benefit of our pro player community. I do think that that's true for the most part, at least. Like, it's going to make structuring things a lot easier, unless HiRez starts messing up payments. That would obviously be a huge issue then. Additionally, we've seen turmoil over team ownership changing hands throughout Season 7 and past seasons, making it hard for fans to follow their favorite players, and for players to navigate their day-to-day lives, visas, and payments. So if you get kicked out in the middle of the year, basically. We believe having fixed team names with all player management run by HiRez will make the league better for both fans and players alike. What does this mean for the players? As part of this change, all team names will remain fixed from season to season. HiRez Studios will announce the Season 8 team names early next year, following the Smite Championships. They're going to be called like Manticores or whatever, I guess. These teams will be owned by HiRez, and initial rosters will be approved by HiRez. All the rosters will be created and controlled by the players. All player payment will be handled through HiRez to individual players. HiRez is committed to ensuring that all contracted players are paid on consistent and timely basis. HiRez will pay for travel visas and visa cost, player travel and visa cost, subject to league policies on top of the player salaries. Also good to see. So that's not an extra expense. Like, I don't even know which travel is exactly included, but if there's like any travel in between to go back home, but at least, you know, if you get kicked out of the league, you get back home and you don't have to pay for it yourself. Previous housing stipends to organizations have been rolled into base salaries, so players can choose how they spend that money rather than it being earmarked exclusively for housing. So there was like a part of the salary that was like, you know, locked for housing. It was not even given to the players, I think it was given to the orgs. A final decision on whether Season 8 will be run online or safely on LAN will be made at a later date, pending the continued development of that thing that I can't say. Should Season 8 be played on LAN, players will be required to be on-site for games. How does this affect player pay? Subject to league policies, players' guaranteed salaries will increase from 30,000 to 46,000, and we had the coach part already as well. In addition to guaranteed salaries, players and coaches will also have the opportunity to supplement their base income with revenue generated through in-game content, as well as team merchandise from official FPL merch store. Finally, subject to league policies, Teams and players will be able to sign sponsors and earn money directly. For example, players might sign a sponsorship deal with a chair company for additional revenue. I like that they use the chair company as an example. I know why. If you watch the SPL, you know why. HiRez must approve sponsors as appropriate for broadcast. We will not take any cut of a team sponsor income, in-game revenue from team awards and avatars, merchandise sales, personal streaming revenue, or prize winnings. This means that instead of the usual percentage cuts codified into many organization contracts, players will receive 100% of the revenue generated by their team. This is very unusual that they get like the full cut from the sponsors and stuff as well. Usually a part of that goes to the orgs basically in return for paying them already. So yeah, this is actually something that means they could get quite a decent amount of money. I was hoping they'd actually have a listing of how much the housing payment part was, but I mean, it doesn't matter now. They can just decide for yourself. They are adults after all. How will HiRez select teams for 2021? For Season 8, HiRez Studios will accept team roster applications for the 8 available Smite Pro League spots. The roster application window will open shortly after the Smite World Championship. The exact timing of this free agency period will be announced in the coming month. Heavy preference will be given to the rosters composed of current and former SPL players or top players from the Smite Challenger circuit. Players will control how their rosters evolve over the remainder of Season 8. We will announce our policy regarding roster locks for these teams in the coming month. So it sounds like roster locks will be towards the end of the season, which could mean that somebody might have to go home in the middle of the year, which would be pretty bad. But then again, you know, that's, I guess, part of the risk of being a pro player. We are currently developing an arbitration program for roster disputes and expect to create full roster regulation policies in partnership with our SPL players. These policies will be announced at a later date. It could be very interesting how exactly they want to execute that, what restrictions they make to that, but overall I think a good decision as well. What does this mean for the fans? We hope that increased salary and stream management structure will lead to increased competition and create new opportunities for sponsorship and advertising within the league. Fans will have more opportunities to directly support their favorite players via in-game purchases and team merchandise because they get the full cut. Having fixed team names will also make it easier to follow your favorite teams and root for your favorite players. This could also be interesting, especially if a team exists across multiple seasons. They will no longer change the org behind them, so they will stick with that name. Rest assured that the SPL will continue on for Season 8 in early 2021 with 8 teams and a format very similar to Season 7. We'll announce more format details shortly after Smite World Championship. What does that mean for the orgs? We value that they've been in the SPL, blah, blah, blah. Subject to league policies, organizations will be able to sponsor individual players and entire SPL team. Organizations' names may appear in in players' in-game names or on jerseys during matches, so they can at least have a jersey with a logo and may be mentioned by the casters. However, the organization's name will not be incorporated in the team name, and organizations will not control rosters, base salary payments, or housing. There's still many logistics to work out as we prepare to enter a new chapter of the Smite Pro League in Season 8. We'll be making a series of announcements in the coming month as we lock in our policies for roster changes, player disputes, and LAN operations during COVID. Can't say that. Almost said it. These announcements and more, including our Season 8 SPL format plans for our semi-pro and amateur leagues, should be coming through shortly after we wrap the Smite World Championship. Blah, blah, blah. You look at Twitter and the rest of that stuff. But I think this is very interesting because a big question is going to be how the teams will actually be put together, because I'm sure there will be current players applying. I'm sure there will be previous pro players applying, and I'm sure there will be SCC players applying. I'm sure there will also be like European players that are now more interested in the league again. And they'll all want to, you know, have a piece of the pie. And I really wonder what the decision making in that regard is going to be. If they're just going to heavily favor the ones that are currently playing, or bring back fan favorites, or base it on popularity. I don't know. I really don't know. That's the thing, right? Before, this was basically more of an org decision to find the right team for them, and now HiRez is essentially the org that's sponsoring them, but they're also deciding all the other teams. They're not just deciding the team that'll be sponsored, but also the team that will run against that team. So they might just pick 2 teams that they think have an interesting rivalry going on for more interesting content for them or something. And that could end up being like relatively frustrating for some people. So I really don't know what exactly the direction of that is. I think it's interesting what they're doing. I think generally it's a good idea. And I think obviously the higher salaries are good for the players. I think it's unfortunate for orgs that have heavily invested into Smite. One that stands out here is obviously Sanguine, who, I mean, brought that, invested into that team, brought that team into the league, sponsored that team, stuck with that team against all criticism, and have a very successful team in the league right now. That's not even based, or wasn't originally based in America. And I thought that was a very impressive and nice storyline. And I really hope that they will find a way to stay in Smite, stay with their team, stay relevant, be able to contribute something to them, but also benefit from that, because it would just be a shame for that org to not have any opportunities afterwards anymore. Other teams that don't pay their players on time and stuff. I think Renegades was infamous for that. Good riddance, I guess. So it's really hard to have a one-track opinion on this, I think, because at the end of the day, it's gonna hurt some. But I think for the larger number of teams and the larger number of players overall, this is probably a good step. I think this is mostly beneficial. And, the downsides are the orcs that were actually good, as well as the potential for certain teams to just not get in under very unfortunate circumstances based on HiRez decisions. But yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know how you feel about these changes. If that makes you more interested in the Pro League at all. If you feel like you're more inclined to buy team bundles now, something like that. And other than that, I hope to see you for the next one, probably later, actually. And if you're new to the channel, feel free to hit the sub button, maybe the bell, so you're notified of other upcoming videos like the one later today. ZiSotto, out.